I'm Billy. I'm an alcoholic. My home group's a Primary Purpose Group in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. We meet 7 a.m., 7 days a week. 5 days are literature-based. Please come by. It's really good to be here. I want to say it's really good to see my friend Roy. Roy was sponsored by my friend Tom I for a long time. This is the first international convention I'm at that Tom's not at. Now, knowing Roy as well as I do, on one hand, I'm saying, wow, Roy's ego must really be in check. He's actually using a scooter. That is a lot of progress for Roy. However, because I know Roy very well and how he likes to behave on the golf course, I wonder if he's using it to entice people to play him for money, thinking that his golf game may not be as good. But I will warn you, Roy will take your money on the golf course. It's really good to be here. I want to say a couple of things. Thank you to the other speakers. I probably agree most of what they said, and probably have our different opinions on other things. I don't want to spy on outside literature from outside people, but AA literature, I just want to make sure I clarify the facts as a past chair of the AAWS board. If you buy a big book for Amazon, you're buying it from AA, okay? If intergroups want to sell some story because they want to sell bumper stickers and earrings and a whole bunch of other stuff that have nothing to do with AA, and then they want to complain that people are buying directly from the General Service Office, that's really not fair, okay? If you're buying books that other people publish that are not AA, yeah, I think that's trash too. If you're buying those little red big books that people sell for $1 each that people are becoming rich on, that no money goes towards helping other alcoholics, yeah, I'm the same way. But the truth is, the generations have changed. The truth is, most of you probably have Prime accounts. That's an outside issue, but we know that you have them. The truth is, the buying tendencies of people have changed. The truth is, people don't want to drive down to Macy's or Sears or the intergroup. They want to walk out of their meeting, they want to get on their vape, and they want to open their phone, and they want to order literature. That's what happens. That is... And we can't be stuck 3 generations behind us. If AA wants to survive, we can have the message from the generations behind us if we carry it in the modern generation way we communicate. That's just a fact. Now, I want to talk about First Legacy membership only, because it's killing Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a great Don P. recording out there where he says, the big book renaissance of the 80s and the early 90s is amazing, but it's going to have a downfall. We are going to have a lot of First Legacy only members with no experience with the traditions. And if we think that hasn't happened before, I just want to let you know, we almost burned this thing down. And if no one's told you that, I hope you read AA Comes of Age. I really, really do. Now, whoever your God is or your God isn't, I respect. Whatever your beliefs in the world are, I respect. But I think most of us, depending on who our God is or God isn't, can agree that human beings in the world have been around a long time. A very long time. And leading up to when that book was published in April of 1939 was a long time. Think of that. From whenever you or your God or however you believes the world started, until April of 1939 when we published that great book, is a very long time. And in a short amount of time, like 7 years, we almost burned this down. The big book is our success story. AA Comes of Age is our story of how we almost burnt AA down, and how we're not going to let that happen in the future. That's what AA Comes of Age is. Think about that. I believe that the steps are entirely, unbelievably powerful. But unfortunately, we're alcoholic. Unfortunately, the steps without the traditions are not powerful enough for alcoholics. By 1942, 43, 44, alcoholics, power, money, prestige, steps without traditions almost destroyed this thing. Saying you've been through the traditions without reading AA Comes of Age is like saying you've been through the steps without reading the big book. It just is. It's just a fact. You know, and I want to let you know I brought a little show and tell just to make things a little clear. Because we hear the myth, we need you more than your money. Here's a Time magazine, an original copy, February 19th, 1940. I keep this around. If you go to page 57, it was still legal to have an ad for cognac brandy in magazines. You know, the world wasn't like it is today. You could have ads for cigarettes and brandy and God knows what else, right? And what's right across from the Martell brandy ad? A picture of John D. Rockefeller. And what's there? Last week, one of the best-known teetotalers in the U.S., John D. Rockefeller, had 60 people to dinner. No cocktails were served, for several of Mr. Rockefeller's guests were members of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, when you think about that, that's like Warren Buffett today deciding to get together with 60 AA members. Like, that's who John D. Rockefeller was at the time. And he didn't say, we need you more than your money. It's probably one of the most dangerous things we say in Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, if you're new and have no money, if you're old and have no money, we don't care. But if you have money, we need it. That's the truth. That's the truth. And that's what John D. Rockefeller said. He said, you people are a bunch of over-entitled, lazy, greedy, good for nothing, taking other people's money. There's my friend is here. I used to go to this meeting. I forget the guy's name, but it was in Red Bank on Friday nights, Sober, Fun, and Promises. And on anniversary night, I used to love this one chairperson used to always say, hey, if you're a parent or a relative or a sibling or a spouse, believe it or not, we don't want your money. I know you're going to find it shocking that whoever you're here to celebrate tonight is always asking you for money, but we don't want your money. Like, it is super important that we're super responsible for ourselves. And somehow or another, that's gone a little out of fashion. And I just want to give some examples about that. I love that. First of all, let me just, a historical accurate fact. Yes, there are publishing documents in AA that say long form and short form. It's bad history, okay? There's no such thing as the long form. It's the original form. It's what was originally written. That's what it is, okay? Somebody decided to put long form on it because they decided to create a short form, okay? No one took a short thing and made it a new long form. They took a long form and decided to make their own interpretation. And the most important part of that is their own members. Not T-H-E-R-E, but T-H-E-I-R. Their own members. That our home groups are supposed to be self-supporting. And it's really hard to talk about Tradition 7 without talking about Warranty 2 in the 12th concept. And I'll read it. Sufficient operating funds plus an ample reserve. That's who we are. Sufficient operating funds plus an ample reserve. Now, if you have people, and I know they sometimes get upset with me when I use dictionary definitions, have at it. Could be your delegate. It's going to be like, don't believe them. But just open up a Webster's dictionary or whatever dictionary you want to use. Ample is a very easy word to define, okay? Large and accommodating or more than enough, okay? So when we say that our reserve fund is 6 months instead of 9 now and we say everything's okay, no. Warranty 2 says sufficient operating funds and an ample reserve. 6 months is not large and accommodating. 6 months is not large, is not more than enough. If the reserve fund is supposed to be 9 to 12 months, yeah, it's no longer ample. And this other thing that seems to be going around, and I love AA history. I just don't want to be part of changing it the last couple of years or the last 20 years. I don't want to be part of that. We're not your typical nonprofit, and we're not a government. Concept 6 is very clear. We have deliberately chosen the corporate rather than the institutional or government model. In other words, deficit spending is not spiritual. In other words, spending more than you take in is not spiritual. And I'll give an example. I'm sure people here have been in the same place I've been. You ever have somebody say to you after a meeting, "Oh, alcoholics, I have a problem, I need to talk to you"? Yeah, it usually is much more involved than that when they say that, all right? You got to give a lot of time to talk to them. And when they say they have a money problem, if you're in a diner, you can usually take out a napkin. You can usually draw a pen down the napkin. They tell you they have a money problem. And you say, "Oh, okay. How much money do you take in a month?" And you write it down the left side. And you say, "Oh, how much money you spend a month?" And you write it down the right side. And usually with AA members or alcoholics, it's not really complicated. They spend more than they take in. It's usually very, very simple. Now, what drives me crazy about AA institutions for service, districts, areas, intergroups, the General Service Board, all of it, is why we are so willing to operate in untreated alcoholism as a group when we would never do that to a person. Somebody says to you in a diner, they're spending more money than they make. You don't say to them, "You know what? Go get another 5th credit card. Just use the cash advances on that to pay off those 4 maxed cards you have. And when that gets close to the limit, get a 6th card before they cut you off." We would never tell somebody that. We'd tell them to live within their means. We'd tell them to get right-sized about their finances. We'd tell them to try to practice spiritual principles when it comes to finances. We don't take donations in AA. We take contributions. I love the story that she told about our home groups because, I always say, I know there's some people from the Northeast here. My mother and father did the best they could with what they had, the best they could. Didn't teach us a lot of good things, but some. One of the good things they taught us is that you don't really go to somebody's house, especially the first time, without bringing something. I don't know if that's some Depression-era Irish Catholic BS that was put into their head. Like, it doesn't matter how bad and ratty your house is, just don't go somewhere else without bringing a gift, right? And if you were my mother, you brought an Entenmann's cake. If you're from the Northeast, you know what Entenmann's is. And if you were my mother, you might have went to the Entenmann's thrift store where you could get a cake with an expired date, right? Which was cheaper. And if you were my dad, you brought alcohol, right? And that's what you do. And if you go to your friend's house and you bring something as a gift, that's nice. But you know what? You don't got to pay their mortgage. And you don't got to pay their light bill. And you might help out with vacuuming or the dishes. But it's their house. They're responsible. We want to talk from a big AA future, and sooner or later the conference is going to have to take action. This thing of supporting other groups to have GSRs is killing Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's not the board's fault. I hear people, "Oh, the board. No, it's the delegates. It's the areas. What's going to be next? Are we going to start paying for rent for groups? If I want to start a group, you know what? I don't have enough money to have in my area, Area 15, you need about $1,500 a month to have a GSR. But what about if I can't afford my GSR and my rent? Am I going to ask the area to pay my rent? What's the difference between paying my rent and paying my GSR expense? And I hear people say, "Oh, Billy, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth because the conference will pay for delegates that their area doesn't have enough money." That's not really true. The conference is limited to 93 people, and you just can't create another area without getting a conference permission. The conference can keep its expenses regulated to a certain amount. We don't do that with groups. You can just start new group after new group after new group. And we all know what we have out there now. Too many meetings and not enough groups. And we are not self-supporting. And we have given up all respect for the home group. I've been here a couple of days. I've already heard a couple of people say some of my favorite statements. My home groups. What does that mean? And what literature is that in? I don't know what literature that's in. Or how about this? My Zoom home group, as opposed to what? It's okay if your home group is on Zoom, just like it's okay if your home group is in the basement of St. Joseph's Church. But only one of them can be your home group. There's no such thing as a Zoom meeting or a St. Joseph's Church meeting. Those are locations. That's where they are. But because we're not loyal to our home groups anymore, the sickness financially is killing us. You know, I tell people all the time, if you want to see what's going on with yourself, keep track for 1 month. That's all I ask. That's what I was asked to do a long time ago. 1 month. How many days a week? Write it down. What basket did you put money in? How much? And at the end of that month, total up your total basket money to AA. And then total up how much you gave your home group versus how much you gave other groups. Most AA members that do this exercise, most of the time they give their home groups less money than other groups, or around the same, and it shouldn't be. The majority of your AA money should be going to your home group. We should outlaw the announcement, I'm Billy, I have an announcement, my group needs support. That means your group is not self-supporting and is doing something wrong. That's what that means. We're not in the government subsidy model. We're not. We're not in the deficit spending model. I mean, I hate to say that. And, you know, let me talk a little bit about budgeting. Budget is a realistic estimate of revenue and expenses. AA leaders have created, now I'm a financial professional. And by the way, I know how much money I put in the basket. I know what kind of car I drive. I don't want to be judged for how much money is in my pocket. I'm also an expert at smoking cigarettes that people have already put out and relighting them and smoking them myself. I'm also an expert in making ramen noodles, and I'm talking about the plastic package with the little dirt package inside you cut open and mail, right? So I know what it's like to be poor and have no money. But this ridiculousness of AA leaders treating the AA people like they're beginners at a beginner's meeting, we got to change that. If your area or intergroup or district is adding up your expenses and then making your revenue that number, yeah, you're about as financially irresponsible as is possible in the world. That is not called a budget. That's called once upon a time. That's called a fairy tale. Like, we have to live within our means. We have to. I also want to talk about AA leader responsibility. We're always talking about how much money we put in the basket. That's easy for me. Just go back in time into your head of when you started putting $1 in the basket. I don't care if you never did. But if at some time you started putting $1 in the basket, you know when that was. Were you a year? Were you 2 years? Was it whatever? Whatever time you just threw $1 in. That was your natural contribution. Just think about how much money you made a year at that time. And then think about how much money you make a year now. And is your dollar, has that caught up with how much money you make? My experience as an individual is I have to check my motives all the time. Like, do I want to be a big shot, or has my 1 become a 5, and has my 5 become a 10? And am I taking care of my home group? Yeah, I mean, those things are super, super important. And if I'm an AA leader, have I become too grandiose about how easy it is to take money out of the basket? Like, I know, and somebody called me and said, Billy, this will be recorded. You need to make sure that you you get this message out. But, it's disgraceful. It's disgraceful. I know what my area numbers are. I know what other area numbers are. I just ask for you to look for your own. I just ask for you to look how much money is your intergroup, area, or district spending on treatment, CPC, corrections, and PI work. And I want you to compare that to how much you're spending to meet an assembly, send officers to things like NARASA and PRASA and SASA, all kinds of crazy funding that's out there. If you're going to see in your area, if you're like my area, you're spending less than 10%, 8.2% in my area, on the mission rather than the bureaucracy. Do you know how many alcoholic men and women and people are dying in correctional facilities and treatment centers? And we want to create a college of cardinal atmosphere. We're celebrating people with titles like I have. I'm a Panel 49, past delegate, and a past trustee, and a past chair of AWS. Is it more important that we are funding all these things? Yeah, I know AA requires a tent around the circus better than anybody else. We have a circus, and we need a tent. We do. But the majority of our money should be going to saving lives, not making people look important. That's the truth. That is the truth. So, I'm going to end with you by telling you this. I have another Time magazine. I didn't bring it, but I keep it next to this one. Who would have known? Who would have known 1940, a back page article, the richest man in the world meets with 60 people, including a couple of alcoholics. And who would have known that in 1998, the editors of this magazine would get together and they would say, you know what? In 2 years, two things are going to happen. Time magazine is going to be 80 years old, and a new century is going to start. And so they hired 20 of the most experienced, 20 of the smartest history professors in the world. Now, there might be an AA archivist in this room, so nothing personal. But they did not hire AA archivists and AA historians, the 20 smartest historians in the world, and they said, you have one assignment. What are the 80 most important days of the 20th century? Start on January the 1st, 1900, and end today. And if you open that book, it's called The 80 Days That Changed the World. You can get it on Google or eBay or whatever. When you get 15 pages in the section on the 1930s, you'll land on June 10th. One of the 80 most important days, according to the smartest people in the world, where it says, on this day, a broken stockbroker from New York met a broken surgeon from Akron, and from that meeting led to the birth of Alcoholics Anonymous, which has saved millions of alcoholics. Do you think the person who wrote this article ever thought, years later, that what they were writing about would be the most 80 important days of the 20th century, compared to the wall coming down, compared to Martin Luther King's speech, compared to Jackie Robinson being the first black player in Major League Baseball, compared to women getting the right to vote? And am I treating AA like its birth is one of the 80 most important days in the world's history? That's the only question I really have to ask myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Billy. That was great. I want to thank all the speakers for giving a great talk on the Seventh Tradition.